Good morning, the internets. Welcome to Let's Play Games West Virginia. We're a group of West Virginia-based streamers who have something going on every day and night of the week. Typically, this would be Snarf Goes In Blind, but I had a special thing that I wanted to give a try this weekend. I'm working on a Numenera campaign for a couple of players, and I wanted to go through the Ruin Generation engine that is in the Jade Colossus book. So that's what well, that's a bummer. So that's what we'll be doing today while I fix this camera. If you knew how long it took to get all of that lined up, you would also be as sad as I am right now. I wonder if we can put something heavy on top of that. Oh, the perils of live interneting. That doesn't feel all that much more stable. All right. The camera seems silly out of focus. Oh, man. I promise all this got tested beforehand. All right, that's more in focus. All right, so if you tuned in last Thursday, Numenera is a Monte Cook Games game, and it is based in the Ninth World, which is a future version of Earth, approximately 1 billion years into the future. The world has been controlled by 8 great civilizations in the past. Not much is known about all of them. Some of them were terrestrial-based, some of them were alien species, and others may have even been interdimensional. So if you are familiar with the statement by Arthur C. Clarke that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, that's kind of the touchstone for Numenera. So all of the people who are living in the Ninth World are a new civilization. They're discovering their world really kind of for the first time. It has been massively terraformed. It is more than once. It is unrecognizable to humans of the 21st century. And even what it means to be human is something that is up for debate. So Numenera is this really interesting science fantasy world. So everything from medieval kind of weapons and armor to lightsabers, laser pistols, teleportation, and other machines that are far in advance of our own are kind of a go. So the system works on, yeah, I did say billion with a B, Richard, thanks. 1 billion years into the future. In fact, there's even a talk that Monte Cook has where they discuss the fact that the Earth may have physically been moved to account for changes in the sun during that period, which is pretty cool. So one of the things that is a feature of this of the game are ciphers, which are pieces of the Numenera, this ancient technology that the players use, and they're supposed to spend them and receive them in a great quantity. So what we did on Thursday was we created about 7 of those. I want to have about 30 on hand when it's all said and done, and some of those will get populated today into the ruin that we create. So what we're going to be doing is the Numenera rune mapping engine that came out of the Jade Colossus book. So recently there was a Kickstarter wherein for like $18 you could get pretty much every Numenera book that was in print. And one of those is the Jade Colossus Adventure, and it's somewhere between a campaign setting and an adventure. But what's neat about it is there was some basic maps for the Jade Colossus Ruin, and then this ruin mapping engine for fleshing it out, so that basically even if your players had read it, or if you wanted to run it multiple times, the dungeon, as it were, changes. So we're going to be doing that, but we're going to put a slight twist on it. So my players are going to be running through the Nightmare Switch, and towards the end of that, I'm going to have them cross a threshold. And there's a portion of this adventure, spoilers ahead for GMs, which deals with some alien technology. So the way that I'm going to segue that into a new campaign from a pre-made module is they're basically going to unknowingly step across a threshold and be teleported to a space station that's in Earth orbit. And what we're actually going to be doing today is producing part of that space station. But it doesn't have to. Please don't imagine like a 2001 A Space Odyssey space station. So the idea is that it's going to be a space station from an alien species. So it doesn't have to look anything at all like what our current science fiction space stations might. It could be a hollowed out asteroid, or it simply could have had so much time pass that it's indistinguishable from terrestrial ruins. One of the things the ruins generator has room for are creatures and events. And since it's going to be possible to actually end up in the space station from a terrestrial point, that's entirely reasonable. So it's an interesting idea that I kind of want to play with, and I want to keep that in the back of our mind that we're dealing with a space station. So if there's a room with like a huge interstitial space, maybe that ends up as the cone of a thrusting rocket. Or something else. So as we work through that, feel free to keep that in the back of your minds as well, and let's get started. So I have a sheet of graph paper here that we can start off with. Oh man, that was dangerous for that camera. So we can actually start the mapping. So the Ruin generation engine in the Jade Colossus book is about 46 pages, and most of that is chart based. So what we'll do is we'll start with a point. We'll start with a feature, and then we work through different charts to kind of have the ruin sprawl. So we're going to start off with our known entry point, which is going to be here. I'm going to treat this, it's out of your view. I'm going to treat these as 10 by 10 blocks, and we'll get going. So to start this off, we're going to need a d20 and 2 d10s. Those are the main mechanisms for determining what goes on for this. So the very first thing we're going to start off is on the corridors table, and that starts off with a d20. That's out of your view, but it was an 11. Oh, that looks like a 13 from that angle. Okay, so this camera's at a slight angle because logistics, but that's actually an 11. This is a 6, and this is a 5. So if that gets confusing, please let me know, and we'll try to adjust that. So the 11 on the corridor table is actually not doable for us. That's the passage is blocked by a corridor collapse, and that's supposed to be our entryway. So 18. So the passage runs an intermediate distance into an interstitial cavity and then runs an additional distance across that cavity's entire width as a catwalk. Roll on the cavity table to determine the nature of space passed through, and again on this table for where the passage returns to normal. So this is going to say an intermediate distance is 30 feet. I'm going to pull this in for a cavity. I'm envisioning kind of a large cavity. So the system is not designed to be entirely deterministic. So it's not going to tell us absolutely everything that we need to know. So there's definitely room for creativity and interjection. So we need to head over to the table for dealing with those spaces. So I purchased all of these on Kickstarter, so I have PDFs for most of these, but since this is 45 pages of table, I decided that the best thing to do would be to have printouts for those. In future editions, there should be... So most of these books have side annotations that tell you where stuff is, but these tables do not. So that's kind of a bummer. There probably should be a thing like, hey, flip to page 105 for the cavity table. So I went ahead and printed out those 45 pages to kind of speed that up. All right, so the man, I'm going to have like a hell of a hard time pronouncing this word. Interstitial cavity table. So that's going to be a D100, and that's going to tell us what kind of cavity we're looking for. So this is a 96. My camera cropping did not help me out. Let me see if I can adjust that, because that was originally set up to like definitely be able to view those things. All right, that's a little bit more top down, but it's also a little bit more precarious. So we will try our best. And can we get that to focus? Ish. All right, so that is a 96. So this is a massive metallic ring dominates the cavity, cracked and possibly unstable. The ring magnetically holds a brilliant sphere of glowing white material at the center. So this is supposed to be like a large fallen away section of room with a bridge or corridor crossing the center. So we have to account for a large metallic ring with a bright sphere of glowing white material at its center. I'm kind of imagining that moving. I don't know if you guys are. One of the things that I neglected to set up before we started was I wanted to make sure that we could refer back to these points later. So let me open a document real quick. All right. So we're going to call this, for ease, room 1, and this area is going to be room 2. So room 1 was our main entryway. Which was an intermediate corridor. There really wasn't anything special about it. So room 2 is the interstitial cavity with a large metallic ring with a glowing sphere. All right. So I'm kind of envisioning this metal sphere rotating around, or the metal ring rotating around the sphere. I'm kind of interested in maybe changing that up. So maybe the ring actually goes around the area that the PCs are going to walk on. So they have to kind of walk through it like an arch. And the sphere can be under the bridge. So the ring will surround the walkway. The glowing sphere beneath. I kind of want to flag this because I'm kind of imagining that we can have that come back a little later and potentially have an effect. So we have events and effects for the game, so I want to remember that this is a thing. All right, so we have our first corridor and our first area. So we're going to roll on the exit table to determine how many exits come off of this area. I was treating it as just a straight shot, but I want to maybe add a little bit more randomness into the game. But that's all right. It ends up with one additional exit. All right, so we're going to go back to the corridor table, which will be a D20. That is a 6. Which is another corridor. Oh, actually, that should have been a D100. Sorry. My bad. So there's a touchstone table that you refer back to at each step, and it's called the main feature table, which is what I should have rolled on the first time when we finished with that area. $50. Oh, 50 is a creature, so we are going to have a creature near here. That seems a little fast. I want to re-roll on that and get something maybe closer to. That's also a creature. This thing really, really wants a creature. That too is a creature. Actually, that second roll was chamber, not creature, so we'll go for chamber. So one of the thing is, the system is not designed to obviously be entirely deterministic, or else you could just stick it in some kind of API and spit you out an automatic dungeon, which is super useful for quick adventures sometimes, but it needs to have kind of a narrative arc, and so I have no problem with backing that down. So to generate a chamber, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to roll on the room size table, and then on the room shape table. So the room size table is done on a d20. 19, which means it is 60 feet across. And on the room shape table, which is also a d20, it is going to be a rectangle. So rectangle-shaped rooms are double the rolled room size in one direction. That's huge, actually. That kind of skews up my previous drawing. All right. So 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. We're going to cut that a little bit shorter than it intended. And we have a chamber feature table. So before I finish drawing that out, I kind of want to know how many exits we're working with and what the chamber features are. 48. That is off your view, but it's a 48. A metallic pod that freezes objects. Okay, so this is going to end up being room number 3. So room 3, we're going to have this be 60 by 40 feet. 60 by 40 feet with a metallic rod that freezes objects. So are you guys imagining a metallic rod that freezes objects as like a trap or some function of the room? So the general thought that we need to continue to remember is this is a space station, and these rooms were usable to some intelligence. Now that use doesn't have to be apparent, but it kind of does need to be there. So if we don't... Did I say rod? Oh, you're right. It's a pod, not a rod. So it's a metallic pod that freezes objects. So that could just be something for the players to investigate and could potentially figure out how to operate. So my general thought is that the space station was run by an alien species. So it's not always going to be apparent that they can figure out what everything does or how it does, or maybe they only learn that it does this other function in anticipation of something else. So we have a metallic freezing pod. If we don't have anything right now for that, we can always come back to it and just remember that it's here. So one of the things I wanted to do is take notes, because I've seen some other streams of people using this engine, and basically the end result was they needed to rewatch it, and they forgot many things that occurred at the beginning that would have been useful in the middle and the end. So hopefully we'll avoid some of that. It could be used for processing dead bodies. Yeah, or as either for processing dead bodies or food. Because really, freezing things in space isn't difficult. You just have to expose it to the near vacuum. So in the meantime, I'm going to roll on the exit table to figure out how many exits lead off of this room. And the answer is 1. Oh, that shiny bean from the park in Chicago. Does that thing have a name? SMP would know, except I think he's busy this morning. Yeah, maybe there's a religious reason for preparing those bodies to bring them back home, and that some other process isn't suitable for it. So it could be that there's maybe the remains of whatever this alien culture's predominant religion was here, and maybe obviously the players won't have information about that, but we can use that when we tailor the descriptions. Basically, this could have been a large ritual area, and yeah, so this could be a large ritual area, and why this room would be given extra space and have this item here. That's a good idea. I like that idea, Richard. Thanks. Alrighty then. So next we are back to the chamber, not chamber features, the main feature table, which is a D100. So 75 gives us another cavity. So basically, this room is going to almost be like a mesa or a flat spot in this larger cavity. One of the cool tables that I'm looking forward to using, and if we don't get to it organically, I'll probably get to it directly, is the integrated machine table, which is basically a room that is a machine that the PCs walk through, and there are some really interesting things that happen there. All right, so the cavity table is a D100 situation. 98 is pretty high on the table. I don't know how this table treats such things. So this has the same kind of ring that occurred in the previous category. However, the center pulses in a variety of rhythms when creatures enter the area. The pulsing is actually communication from beings who exist in 2 dimensions and are curious about the dimensions of the 9th world. That's interesting. All right, so now we have another one of these rings. Except this one is going to pulse. Oh, that's actually off camera. Well, that's a bummer. We're going to try to steer this back on towards camera here, but I will show it your way in a second. Back to our main feature table, which is again a D100. So what we have thus far, if this doesn't make everyone too stomach sick, is 2 large metallic glowing rings on raised walkways. On either side is going to be this ritual area that has a pod which can freeze bodies. That's a little bit better. All right, back to the main feature table. 88. We now have an abhuman colony. So abhumans are creatures which used to be human, but which now either through mutation or intentional alteration or radiation or a variety of other things, are now other than human. So they may, there's one which has kind of like a goat head. There are others with different abilities and different looks, but they're basically modified humans. Alright, yeah. So I found the creature table. That is not the abhuman colony table. There's the abhuman colony table. If the freezing room is a ritual and it's used for the deceased, it would make sense that the rings are decontamination rings. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if we could explain that to the players by having it such that all of their items are cleaned when they pass through it. Like spotless, like preternaturally uber shiny cleaning. So if there's dust from traveling, if there's dirt, if there's blood caked, you pass through the rings, and upon the other side, you're spotless. That could be an interesting idea. All right, so the rings will clean any object which passes through. So our 4 was another set of rings. I got lax on our notes here. So the other ring was going to flash with information from some other n-dimensional being. So it says they're interested in the 9th world. So when I read that, I was not imagining that the interdimensional beings are the ones that created this space station. I was imagining them as kind of a third-party observers. Is that kind of how you guys are feeling, or do you think it should have a closer tie to the purpose of the space station? I'm going to do a couple of quick rolls to determine where our abhuman colony is located, because that's not determined by that chart. Could be interdimensional archaeologists. That's not a bad idea. So I think what I like for this abhuman colony area, which I'm going to denote as Area 5, is actually just going to be like a side room, basically like a shaft to a room that is above this one that they have access to this area through, either to observe or attack or whatever they would like, but it's not an immediately apparent place for the PCs to enter. So our abhuman colony table is a d20, and these are Laris. So I'm going to need to look those guys up. So 5 is a shaft in the ceiling through which Laris can interact with the PCs. So there's a few abhumans in the original books, then Destiny and Discovery added some more, and Jade Colossus added further ones. So there's a couple. I just want to know what they look like, man. Well, I don't know. We'll have to look it up later. So spot 5 is where the Laris abhumans hang out and look. So we go back to our touchstone of the main feature table. So my first suggestion is, if you use these, are to, on the main feature table. Oh man, there already is a page reference. I'm just dumb. Never mind. Life is hard. Alright, so the main feature table is again a D100, which was 62. Which gives us a creature, but we just did that, so we'll do something else. 99 is a vault. Alright. Now, whether that means like a large arch in the ceiling or like a sealed bank vault, I don't know. So vaults are usually sealed chambers where builders have stored valuable, dangerous, or otherwise important items, or in some case, creatures. Getting past a vault seal normally requires a successful difficulty 7 intellect task, which means it has like a DC of 21, which is pretty high. About 50% of vaults contain defense systems designed to neutralize those who improperly gain access. It might inflict 7 points of energy damage, or it could trigger more elaborate defenses. So, to generate a vault, determine its size by using the chamber table subtables. Roll once on room size and once on room shape. So we'll flip back to rooms. So for room, so this is going to be 6, but we don't know what shape it is yet. All right, so the room size is a D20. Which is 15 feet across, so that's not terribly large. And we need to know its shape, which is also a D20. It is rectangular. All right. So we're going to give it 15 feet by 30 feet. And this is going to be room 6. Objects, items, and creatures or other things found in the vault are level 7 on average, although feel free to vary that. Generally speaking, removing something from a vault has a chance to trigger some kind of automated response. Vaults have no exits other than the one used to gain entry. If not used for its original purpose, an item of Numenera found in the vault could be salvaged for 1d6 ciphers, 1d100 shins, which are a currency, and an artifact. All right, so for vault contents, we're going to roll a d20, which is an 18. So what appears to be an ornate mirror hangs on a pedestal within a clear synth dome, synth being a synthetic material. Examination of the mirror reveals that it's a vertical sheet of reflective liquid, and touching it causes ripples. The sheet is a level 8 Numenera artifact. It depletes in 1d20 rounds, or uses, excuse me, that can transfer someone who steps into the mirror to another dimension or level of reality. The user must know that the destination they seek exists. The GM decides if the user has enough info to confirm that its existence and the level of difficulty needed to reach it. Otherwise, the user merely walks back out of the liquid surface of the mirror. Huh. Okay, so here's an interesting thing that the randomness of dice have produced. So we now have these 2 rings, which in effect purify the person passing through them. One of which will, at maybe the first one they enter, cleans them. Then they're going to enter this ritual area with the large metallic pod, which can freeze creatures, which we know to be used to basically handle, store the dead. and they're going to pass through a second one of these rings. So if the first one physically cleans them, then they enter the ritual area. Then they pass through the second ring, and then they actually get to this place where they can physically enter this other dimension if they so desire. Maybe that second ring should do something else. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit because we've only had one exit rooms thus far, and there's at least 3 places we didn't roll on the exit table. So I'm going to re-roll those quickly to give us some more places to build. But for those of you in the chat, I want you to think a little bit about what that second ring can do to prepare a person who is now able to go into that other dimension where that second ring was communicating with people. It would be hilarious if that second ring, the flashing communication, was just like a loudspeaker at a train station or a subway or an airport, like, please notify any personnel of unattended baggage, or just like something totally mundane that players won't know, but we can chuckle at the idea of. So I'm going to head back real quick and roll on some exit tables, because we should have rolled at space 4 and 5. So 6 is going to be a dead end. That's the end of that particular trail. So we need additional exits. All right. So one of the options is for one sealed exit, which we'll give there. The second ring is used to remove non-native bacteria and such before the frozen remains are sent back home through the mirror. Ah, that's interesting. So the mirror isn't to, this whole process isn't to send living beings back to the other dimension, but it's to several layers of processing for contamination for dead beings to go back home. That's interesting. That's a good idea. So the first one will clean any additional dust and particles, and the other thing will handle bacteria. I wonder if there needs to be some feature that would disable Numenera before it goes back. That would suck for the PCs, obviously, because they have to walk this path to find the mirror. So this section has gotten really interesting, but I think that it almost needs, it's interesting enough to be at the end of an adventure. So while we've created it, I think that in the back of my head, this is going to be a culmination of some discovery, not the first thing they walk into. So we had a sealed door that I think I'm going to put back in the pod room, and 2 other sealed exits. Actually, I don't want to change this pod room at all. I like the fact that it's in and out. There's one way too. So one of the things that's interesting about Numenera is you don't have to be as particular about directions and overlap as you would be in something which exists in like traditional 3D space. So there's no actual reason that 2 rooms which are connected by an apparent corridor are located anywhere near each other because of the level of technology involved. So our players are getting to this space station accidentally and unknowingly. They're literally going to step through a door at the base of like a tower, and upon entering it, begin interacting with the space station. So eventually I want a pretty cinematic reveal where the players have been moving through the space station for some period of time, and then they come across a port window or a view screen, and suddenly they're viewing the Ninth World, from 600 to 1,000 kilometers above the surface, like definitely more than ISS distance, maybe even further than that, a quarter of the way to the moon or something. So I want that to be a large cinematic reveal, and I want that reveal to be pretty late into the adventure. I want them to spend some time in here kind of getting comfortable and familiar with how the space station works. before the realization comes off that they're not even on their home planet anymore. And that seems like the kind of reveal that would be useful before or after this ritual chamber. So I'm going to have to chew on that for narrative purposes. So at this point, I think what I want to do, because I really like what's laid out here, is basically all right. So Jason asked, maybe it could work the other way, that the mirror is a gateway from the other place to the space station for bringing in food or other items. That's an idea, and I'll definitely flag that. I think what I'm going to do at this point is pivot, and we're going to start on a new chamber. So because we're kind of building the sprawling thing and I care about the narrative arrangement, what may end up happening is we build little zones and areas, and then later on I figure out how those things connect and interact. So we're going to hop back to the corridor table and start again. I actually can't see what y'all are seeing, so what is that camera showing right now? The ritual room. Pivot my graph paper here. Cool. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off on the corridor table, which is a d20. So that is a 19. So the passage runs a short distance, comes to a T intersection. Roll on this table for each branch. Short distance, T intersection. So I'm going to roll for this one on the left first. So this is a passage which will slope up. So I'm just going to make a note here. So this is going to slope up to another cavity. Apparently we're digging the cavities. So now we need the main feature table to determine we need the cavity table, which is on page 112. Cavity table is a D100 situation. 53. This is a large table. It spans about 4 pages. So here, blotches of green and yellow color move like the shadows of clouds across the empty surface of this large space. The color shadows are attracted to motion, and they will attack creatures by staining and then eating their substance, converting them into yet more color. And there are carnivorous color levels. So these are level 3 creatures, which means it'll take a roll of 9 to hit them. They inflict 4 points of damage and ignore armor. And they're in the 9th world bestiary too. Alright. So we're going to mark this area as 7 and this one as 8. Pull this aside for a moment, because again I was lax in my note keeping. So 6 was the vault and metallic mirror. Then we have an area break. 7 is the T intersection. Left side slopes up to a cavity. 8 is the cavity with carnivorous color clouds. Level 3. So it's interesting that we might come across something specifically which is going to like stain and alter the player's armor, clothes, and color. So if they hit that first and then later on in the adventure start passing through those rings that clean them up, that'll be an interesting visual take. So I think that works, and I dig that. Carnivorous color clouds would be a good band, but it would be I don't even know what kind of band it would be. Maybe I don't know, some kind of like trap music or like Euro techno circa 1997 band. They would definitely play Darude Sandstorm. All right. So I'm going to leave the second thing on 7 hanging for a bit and kind of follow 8 to where it heads. So on our exit table, we rolled a 27, which tells me that it was the wrong kind of die, and I should have been rolling on a d20, because it only goes to 20. 1, no additional exits. I'm not digging that. 15, 2 additional exits. All right, there we go. All right. So for our 2 additional exits, we're going to head back to the main feature table. That is, did I roll a 27 again? I mean, granted, it's a 1% chance, but it seems unlikely. 54. 54 is going to be a chamber. So this is the kind of, I don't know, I like these kind of things that the DM can kind of play by him or herself outside of the game, that feels game-like. So like this is really interesting. There's a game called Stars Without Number that I really like, where there's a DM turn, and outside of the game, the DM like controls factions. And I like that it seems that games are pivoting in a way so that the GM's work outside of the game, which is often not insignificant, is structured in some way. So granted, this is like a 45-page document just for producing ruins. It's not going to produce you an adventure. But even through this little bit that we've done here already, you can kind of see that, like, you know, the hints of story begin to crop up. And I kind of like this additional structure. I think it's an interesting trend in newer games. So the first thing we need to know is room size. That's a d20. So our room size is 15 feet across, which seems to be a pretty common size for our little area. And our room shape is a square. My map is not well suited for dimensions of 15. Wow, that is not a good square. Apologies in advance. So what is the other side of that exit? Wait, there's a chamber feature table, right? We need stuff happening in that room. There's a certain percentage of rooms that are just empty. It says 5% of newly generated chambers reveal a route marker. 15% are empty. None of those say empty. And there's chamber features too. When do you use each one? If you determine that one isn't empty, roll on either the chamber features 1 subtable or the feature 2 subtable. Choose one or flip a coin to decide. Well, let's do chamber features too, because it's new and we haven't done it yet. So I'm gonna roll this again. That is a straight 50. Pulses of green light are emitted from a sphere-like device, changing slightly with each pulse as if counting something down. All right, that's lovely. All right, this is going to be room 9. So 9 has the green countdown timer. Do we want that to actually count something down, or do we want it to simply be something to produce anxiety in the players? I'm hesitant to have it have no payoff, because I think generally things should have a payoff, but we may come across something later that we want to tie back to room 9. Alright, so our other exit we have on the main feature table is a 17, which is a corridor. For a corridor, we need to know some stuff. That was like the worst kind of roll. I just spun the die. Alright, so this passage extends a little bit and then is blocked by a collapse. So that goes nowhere. Ten is a blocked passage. Alright, so now we go back to the other fork on our area. And hit up the main feature table. If you have something later where something happens on an interval, it could call back to that, wondering what happened. Yeah, that could work, Jason. It's also entirely possible that whatever means of standard alert that the aliens use might not be perceivable. Or whatever the alert is happening has already happened in the history of the space station. Maybe that's partly why the space station are ruins. We can chew on that a little bit and see what we come up with. So main feature table. 57 is a chamber. I think I actually want a corridor here though, so we're going to produce another corridor. No, this passage is not going to be blocked by a corridor collapse. Passage extends 20 feet and then roll again. So this passage will extend 20 feet. That was also a dumb roll. Passage extends 20 feet. Roll again. It's gonna be like one long ass hallway. Alright, so this passage is going to slope down. And I'm going to then roll on the main feature table. It was a 5, which would be a corridor, so tell it no. 59. 59 is a creature. Creatures live on page 99. Alright, so we first need to determine whether it occurs in a corridor, a chamber, a cavity, a shaft, a rupture, and then generate potential exits. So we get some raw percentages there, so I'm going to roll a percentile die. 43, which puts us in the chamber category. So we need to produce a chamber quickly. So the first thing we do there is a room size. As you can see, like once you get kind of used to this process, it speeds up a little bit. So for our room size, it is 50 feet across, and it is a hexagon. Oh man, I'm gonna have to draw a hexagon. A hexagon has 6 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you were measuring a hexagon and it were 50 feet across, would you measure from one vertex to another vertex, or from one flat side to another flat side? 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think I'm going to have them come in at a vertex. Please don't critique harshly my what's going to be awful hexagon drawing. I think I'm actually going to make this a 6-sided figure, but not like perfectly. Yeah, what luck for me, right? Not perfectly done. Cool. You didn't realize it, but I was just resting on my keyboard and I typed like 19 lines of hyphens. So this is going to be 9, 10, 11 is going to be one long ass hallway. $12 is going to be a creature room. And we need exits for a creature room, which is d20s. 5. No additional exits. All right. So we can head back to our creature table, which was on page 99. All right. So we did size, we did shape, we did exits. Next, determine how many creatures there are. Use the environment section of the creature's entry to inform your decision. Finally, roll 1d100 to randomly generate a creature encounter for characters. The table is constructed to generate a useful result based on the resources that are available to you. The section includes only the Numenera core rulebook, and there's a section that's Numenera plus the bestiary, and a section that includes both bestiaries 1 and 2. So I have all of those, I just don't have them all sitting with me. Well, that's an interesting way to do a table. So I'm going to see if I can share this with you. So as you can see, the way that this works, if you have the access to core rulebook here, there are numbers. Why are you out of focus? Do the focusing camera. All right, so the access to core rulebook numbers would be here. If you have the bestiary 1, it's here, and if you have it 2, it's here. So the table kind of expands based on what you have available to you, and that's pretty interesting. I have all of these. I don't know what they all are off the top of my head. One of the cool things about Numenera, and I realized that I probably did this with a game that I was a player in, was bringing too much out, was like meta knowledge from the game. So if you describe, so if a group of players enter a room, and at the far end of the room is standing a very tall, thin creature in dark, slimline black robes. Its skin is a green, oily looking series of like tight skin with a bulbous head, and a series of tentacles hang down from its face. A sense of menace exudes from it. Roll for initiative. Like, you probably know that you're looking at an Illithid, and if you're not a new player. And one of the cool things about Numenera is that you can use any of the creatures that are in any of these books, or you can simply come up with new ones. And even if you're using creatures from the book, chances are your players don't know them. And if you're coming up with them, of course your players don't know them. And you could just reflavor other things, which of course you could do for D&D, but that doesn't happen as often as it might otherwise. But Numenera really kind of pushes that. So You really don't have to worry about outside meta knowledge at your table because chances are there isn't any. So we rolled an 85, which if we take the straight, I mean, I don't know what any of these are, so it doesn't really matter. All right, we're going to use one from the bestiary, and we're going to put, I don't have a symbol for a creature. I guess we will be terribly creative and put a C with an underline on it. And that is going to be a quotient. All right, so that's that for that section, since we have dead ends. I kind of like this idea of coming up with little sections and figuring out how they're going to go over later. It's not entirely clear that that's kind of how this is designed to work, but I think it's a good way to have that work. Area break. Cool. So the first thing we start off with is a corridor. So we're going to start off with a 20-foot passage. And roll again. Passage runs a short distance and comes to an X intersection. Roll on this table for each branch. So we're basically going to end up with something shaped like this. All right, so I'm going to start off on the right side branch over here. And we roll on a corridor table for that branch. So that is a 13, which means that the passage extends and then bends left. I'm going to assume that this means left from the perspective of someone who is traveling it. We'll give that a slight bend. And hit up the main feature table, which is a 95. 95 is a matter leak. All right, so we haven't had one of these yet. So that's going to be on page 115. So a matter leak is the discharge of a fluid, powder, liquid, or a collection of complex parts and components that is spilled from one area into another which was not meant to contain it. In the area where it is found, it is usually pooled or piled, but if the leak is ongoing, it may flow. The source of the leak is usually a long-dead mechanism or reservoir hidden behind a wall or bulkhead, that is, hidden except for the crack or fracture through which the leak manifests. If a leak is dangerous, any tasks associated with avoiding or defending it are level 5, meaning DC 15, on average. Often characters must risk exposing themselves to a leak in order to continue moving along their route. So if a matter leak is generated on the main feature table, determine whether the leak is located in a corridor, chamber, cavity, shaft, or rupture. So that is a D100 to learn that particular bit of information. That was a 30. That puts us in the corridor section. Yeah. All right, so we're just going to have that be in the bend of the corridor, and then we're going to pop back to the corridor table and roll from there. So the matter leak table is D100. 89. So spiral shells of thumbnail size or smaller. All right, so we have little tiny spiral shells, and it's not in looking at the other things which can feed off of that. They typically would have contained devices, and they were traction control devices that would allow the shells to move in unison if you could find or fabricate a control device. So these are basically going to be little tiny nano robots, but our players are simply going to come across the used husks of them. So I'm kind of imagining like nano hermit crabs that might work in unison for different tasks. And this is simply just an area where some of them weren't left or they were deactivated and stayed here. So this is, I'm going to put a 13 here and leave a note. So the shells of some nano crab lie here in piles. The robotic creatures which once used them are nowhere to be found. That was a little underwhelming. I was excited for some big event. All right, so from here I'm going to roll on the corridor table again, which extends 20 feet. And the passage comes to an end. All right, so I'm going to move towards this central branch here and roll on the main feature table, which gives us an 82, which is an access way, page 99. An access way is similar to a corridor, but it's generally far smaller, apparently never intended for regular traffic. Often used for maintenance, composed of synth and metal. They're only about 3 feet wide and tall, although they can become narrower. So, to generate an access way, roll on the table. The table may request you roll again after you obtain the first result. Once you've rolled for the access way length and direction, refer to the exit table to determine if it has exits, how many and what kind. Remember that the opposite end may represent an exit unless it's blocked or comes to a dead end. 5% of newly generated access ways reveal a cryptic route marker from a previous explorer. So we just start with the d20 on the access way table. 8. The access way runs parallel to previously generated chambers or corridors for a short distance, with hidden openings into each of those spaces. Roll again on this table. If no previously generated corridors or chambers are mapped nearby, use result 10 to 15, which kind of is the case. So it's going to extend a short distance. And we'll roll again. The access narrows to 4 inches and it continues. That is not going to be passable most of the time. So it narrows and it's going to open back up. So what we can do here All right, we're going to terminate it here. First we're going to roll on the exit table. So my thought is that since we're going to be playing a little fast and loose with these areas, we can determine where these exits might go in the future. So for the exit table, we have one additional exit. So I'm going to have an exit here, and I'm going to have an exit here, and we're going to determine later on where those go. So because it's a space station, there's multiple levels. There's no reason to build in two-dimensional structures, and we have things like teleportation. There's no reason to be overly concerned about the exact layout for those things. So now we have the left table, so we'll head back to the main feature, which is an 80. That's another access way, but I don't want to do one of those, so try it again. 51 is a chamber. So we're going to need size, which is 15 feet across, and shape, which is a rectangle. It's going to be a 15 by 30 room. I'm just going to have that kick up a little bit and then extend 30 feet this way. Though I probably should have rolled for exits before drawing the walls. One additional exit and one sealed exit. Well, that works out all right. So this is going to be our additional exit, and our sealed exit is going to be down here. Main features. 56, which would be a creature. Oh, we didn't do a corridor, a chamber feature. First I'm going to roll on this. If it's 15 or under, it's going to be empty. If it's anything higher, we'll roll on the table. So that was a 31, so we're going to roll on the table. That's a 74. Oh, okay. All right, so this room, let's see, it's going to be, this whole area is going to be 14. And I just drew through a doorway. This is going to be 15. All right, a slight bit of record keeping real quick. So 14 is an access way, which will have 2 exits to other areas of the ship, a 4 by 4 inch, that's like a tiny shaft, connects each portion of the access way. 15 is a chamber. So this chamber has many wires covering every available surface except for an area of the floor, which dampen all sound. So whether this is some kind of data sphere throughput or not, or has some other function, we do not currently know. All right, main feature table for, all right, we have 2 directions for main feature tables. Which gives us a corridor, which means the passage bends left. So this is going to be a corridor which bends left, which works perfect because I was running out of graph paper on that side. $83. is a rupture. No, we haven't had a rupture yet. Let's do a rupture. Alright, so ruptures are unplanned gaps, voids, or hollows within the prior world installation. Unlike cavities, which were purposefully constructed by the builders even though they were not meant to be directly inhabited, ruptures are a result of events that occurred in the millennia since: earthquakes, detonations, strain energy erosions, yada yada yada. Unchecked biological growth, destructive hollows intersect with regular rooms and corridors. So if a rupture is generated on the main feature table, it should encompass the most recently generated previous feature. So if you rolled a rupture from an exit leading from a corridor, there is in fact no exit. The rupture becomes the exit, which might well erase part of a corridor too. A rupture is bounded space, but it might have one or more exits that leads back to a non-ruined section of the installation. However, the exit leading into the space, the opening should be irregular and obviously not part of the original architecture. Generally speaking, a rupture is random in size, and it can be small or vast. All right, so we have a rupture table. And it's as straightforward as rolling on that table and seeing what we're left with. Synth grass, the color of milk, grows in rough patches here and there, rustling slowly. So we're going to destroy this corner and this corner of the room. And this is going to be a rupture. Excuse my poor planning as far as cartography goes. So 15 ends in a rupture, which destroyed the end of the room and the following section of ship. So I'm kind of imagining these milky white grasses like swaying slightly in a current which cannot be felt or seen by the PCs. So all of the grasses are like moving in unison, like clearly affected by something, but it is not something the PCs can interact with. And so maybe occasionally they all shake and move in a direction as if like some force impacted nearby. Or a wave of water were to push them, but there's nothing for the players to actually feel. These things just behave in accordance with causes which simply don't affect the PCs. All right. So in the interim, one of the things that I've decided to do with that access way is we decided there were exits, is to produce chambers there and then build off from those. Definitely extra dimensional grasses, yeah. So something that is perceived but which behaves differently. So I'm going to produce 2 corridors, or 2 chambers, and then from there build some exits and continue this map. So, for the first thing we need to know is room sizes. This is a closet-sized room, which is not actually helpful for my narrative intent right now. All right, so this is going to be 30 feet across, which is more better, and is a rectangle. So this is going to be a 30 by 60 foot room. So 30 by 60. I need to know about exits before we draw those. 1 additional exit. Okay. And I want that exit to actually be to a small corridor here. So this is going to be a way where that access way gets entered from this room. Chamber features. All right, so if we're 15 or below, nothing happens. Something did happen, so we're going to roll on the Chamber Features 2 table, which gives us a 75. All right, I have to read like 4 other things for that. Hang on a sec. So silver spheres on a device seem like simple metallic orbs, but they have an allure via telepathic induction that is difficult to ignore. A character must resist having one memory telepathically edited out, and the character gains an affection for a kind of food, activity, or entertainment that never previously appealed. Okay. So this is going to be room 16. It contains a constellation of floating spheres which play a soft music which determine there's a mechanism for how that works. So there is a table for DCs where words like difficult, challenging occur to pick DCs. Difficult to ignore. So a difficult DC for this, I think, would be one in which even a trained person fails about 50% of the time. So that puts us within striking distance of like 9 to 12. So we're going to make this a level 4 challenge, which compels the PCs to touch them. Upon failure, one memory is removed, and an affectation or like is created for a new thing. All right, so that is, we have one exit from that weird room. Which pulls us back to the main feature table. '93 is an integrated machine, which is what I have been waiting for the entire time. So, an integrated machine occurs on 109. So an integrated machine resembles the kind of devices that can be generated on the chamber table. However, they're more complex, and more often than not, they have a lasting effect. To use an integrated machine, an explorer must first succeed on a level 6 intellect task, which means there's a DC of 18. About 30% of them require some additional component to repair before they can be used. A failed attempt has negative consequences. It often won't function more than once or twice. It usually has a control surface or activation platform, arch, cavity, or other receptacle. An integrated machine can be salvaged for 2d20 shins, those are currency, and 1 or 2 ciphers, maybe an artifact which destroys the machine. If an integrated machine is rolled on the main feature table, determine whether it's located in a corridor, chamber, or vault, then generate exits. So we have percentages here, so we'll just roll on a percentile die. And that is 20, which means it will occur in a corridor. So let's get some dimensions for this corridor. Which is D20 business. So it's literally just like a nodule that comes to an end. All right, and we have a D100 table. So let's go. Let's go to room 17. That is a 79. This works. So when activated, the device contains a wealth of confusing scenes from an ancient starfaring species. So however the players are going to interact with it, it will basically, I think, produce some telepathic induction in which they can experience these scenes. So I would like to tie that in somehow with the devices of the previous room. So this is a integrated machine. Fusing scenes of an ancient starfaring race. So maybe the reason that the spheres in room 16 delete a memory is to make space for these alien memories. So the idea here being that maybe the machine only turns on for you in the integrated machine area if you've done the thing from the previous one. I kind of like that idea. All right, so if a player does the thing in room 16, then they can do the thing in room 17. So they'll see some confusing scenes of an ancient seafaring race, and I think what I would like to have happen is that in those scenes there is a clue to fixing something later on. So maybe if that's how the rings work or some other portion of the ship, I think I want one of the scenes to contain some useful information that the players can use later on. So there's some benefit to losing something and then having this experience. The way the dice have produced this effect is such that this room is like not accessible from the outside except for that access way. I want to just make a note of that because we may want to come back and edit that. Maybe we do have this room be hard to get into, but there's not a good reason that this room shouldn't be able to be gotten to unless there's some other additional way to get there, whether that's a shaft or teleporting. Maybe there was a way to get there which is simply just now not present. So maybe like the rupture over here collapsed an accessway passageway, which we can see is collapsed from somewhere in this room. That could work. So if we flip this room's presence and we move it to the other side, we basically do a mirror image of it, where this access way, so this is like literally a flipping. Maybe the way to get into it is a collapsed passage that will be here from the rupture. So then the only way to get into this room is then through that access way, which actually makes that access way then useful. What will be interesting is if this 4-inch long tunnel, if the players miss this on the first go around, and then they can see it maybe from the other. Jason asks if it could involve the grasses in some way. I'm open to that. Do you have an idea about how that might work? One possibility could be the grasses could maybe have a memory of when that rupture collapsed, bringing in that corridor down. So maybe the grasses, the reason they're reacting to something the players can't see is because they're actually reacting to something in the past, and the way some deal with the way the interdimensional nature of this place exists is that we're seeing the effects of that collapse over and over again. So maybe they're almost like I hesitate to say like a glitch in the Matrix, but like a VHS error where the video is just looping. That could be interesting. But I'm interested to see what idea you have going on there, Jason. Okay, so actually, you and I are on a similar train there. So a signifier of the extra dimensional rift that links to this room. Would they like point in a direction? There would have to be some clue the players could reasonably piece together for how to make that happen. I have to cough. I'm sorry. 1 second. Let me mute this microphone for. Sorry. All right. That audio might be slightly louder than it was before. If that audio level changed significantly, please let me know up or down. I grabbed a slider instead of hitting mute because apparently I'm still working on this large cup of Pikachu coffee. Yeah, I think that we're on the same loop for that grass area. So I would definitely want to make a note in that rupture section. So that would be room 15. So the grasses are replay loops of the collapse of this section across time. So the grasses could be slightly out of phase. So the reason that they're seeing things across time might be this, this cross-phased interdimensional section. And I think I'm going to have one player who is also out of phase periodically. So maybe maybe I'll give them some other piece of information that connects those together in a clue. So we could also put some grasses in the other room. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. So maybe there's a few strands of grass on that collapsed section in room 17. So there could be a few sections of grass near that collapsed section behaving in exactly the same way. So it would, in fact, then. All right, so I'm actually just going to redraw this. But like shittily and fast. So all of this is the rupture. All of this is our rupture. Okay, the audio may have gotten quieter. Yeah, I grabbed a slider and moved it to avoid coughing into the microphone rather than just muting it, which I should have done, but I was trying not to blow out your ears there. Okay, so right, there's going to be weird little grasses here, and there's going to be weird little grasses here. The grasses could even serve as a signifier for future gains. What if they only grow in these rifts that connect 2 points? That's reasonable, especially if this interdimensional and alien species are involved. I don't think I'd want that to be in a across the game rule, but if this species kind of becomes a recurring NPC race, then in that case, I think that would be super reasonable. And it would also be really nice to include those kind of clues where the players are like, aha, I've seen this thing before, and they're instantly oriented to what the deal is. That's a really good idea. I like that idea. All right, so here is the rift. All right, so what we're looking at now is this area which has collapsed. I don't think the area can be seen across. I don't want them to be able to stand here and here and see the other spot of the room. I think the grass is close enough. And then this is going to be the accessway exit. And then this room no longer exists. So, yeah, that works out. Sorry, this camera's having a hard time focusing on the plane of the dice up here and the plane of the paper down here. Move those out. Wait, focus here. Focus here. Do it. So, yeah, I think that works out, and I like where that's leading to. So the accessway then becomes important, right? So that it's not useless. So the other thing that we have is we have an exit at the bottom of this accessway. I'm going to actually pop back into this room for a minute. So this is supposed to be an integrated machine. So this is supposed to be like a tiny side room. So maybe this was once a larger room, and what is only left from the rupture is like this kind of jutting like peninsula of earth out over the collapsed area, and maybe the machine is then much larger. So I'm almost imagining something kind of like Professor Xavier's room. Sorry, I'm not a comic fan, so excuse me if you are. So the large celestial dome that he kind of rolls into, and then he puts on a hat, and he's like projected out into this negative space. And that negative space, its main function is actually for his mind to fill, if I recall correctly, or if I've viewed that correctly. So maybe this could be something similar. So part of the room that was here has collapsed, producing this negative space. So maybe the integrated machine that was here was damaged in some way, and what now happens is, in a very similar fashion, if you put your head into something, or you've done this machine in room 16, this is 16, and this area is 17. Then you can perceive that information. So I'm kind of wondering what that integrated machine is going to look like here. I keep it coming back to this idea of like sticking one's head in something, only because that's like an inherently risky process, right? Like we have some like evolutionary like reminder that like sticking a limb into something or sticking your head into something when you don't know what's on the other side is super risky. Like I don't know if there's this kind of crazy Japanese game show where these typically young women like tie a stake to their head and they stick their head into this area, and there's like a Komodo dragon carnivorous lizard in there, and whoever stays in there the longest wins, because you know, Japanese TV. So if we can, I want to produce some anxiety in this respect. Like they've paid the cost up front, right? So they had a kind of a pig in the poke promise where they interacted with this thing in room 16, and potentially they've lost this memory, they've gained this tick, and so now they've got to do something else that requires, so that was accidental, and now having just done something that feels like a loss, they have to do something that is either brave or stupid, or maybe both brave and stupid. So I want to do, I keep coming back to sticking your head in something. So Jason asked about a control room where a lead engineer would wear some kind of helmet to have an immersive look into the station schematics in real time. That could work. I'm imagining non-humanoid aliens. I don't know if you have been. So maybe maybe it is a helmet, but not designed for a human head. So I have no idea what these creatures look like. But maybe it's something that they have to move into. But it's not apparent that it's a helmet, but it is apparent that they need to be in there. So how do we make that happen, where maybe it's hanging down from cables, suspended over, like right at the edge of that platform. So if they stand right at the edge of that little peninsula, is not the word I'm looking for, like mezzanine, like little balcony area. What kind of design do you think would attract someone to like to realize that the function is to stick something in here too? So it would need, I guess, have a port or an opening. If there could be like a tease of like maybe light from inside, so that like they know they need to get a better look at it. Yeah, Jason, it definitely is going to affect them in different ways, which is why they're going to see something which is not its designed function. So there's what they're going to get is they're going to get like ship memories of this previous spacefaring race. But that's not going to be its original intended function. It's not like a holodeck. It's just, that's how it works. So in the adventure leading up to this, there is a case where there is an orbital satellite, and it could actually end up being the space station, communicating information down to the surface, and that mechanism gets broken. And what happens is everyone who's in the cone of this transmission zone is having like horrific, awful nightmares, to the point where like some people are committing suicide, other people are going crazy, and the player's goal is to fix this machine, which isn't turning it off, it's replacing a part, and then it functions as intended as a communications relay. So the communications relay is such that when it interacts with human neurons, like the human brain is just right on the right spectrum to act as an antenna for this, but it can't be interpreted. It's these crazy, nonsensical, interdimensional alien experiences, so you might get the perspective of something that's moving, but it doesn't have the same physiognomy, so the way it moves is stomach churning and disturbing compared to how a human body is used to moving. So this could actually tie into that in a thematically appropriate way. I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, is what the original owners of the station look like. So in the Nightmare Switch, it's left as an empty mystery because it doesn't matter, because it's a one-shot adventure. I'm using that as a jumping off point to something larger. So I think at this point I need to know what those creatures look like. I'm imagining something that is not directly humanoid. Presumably it needs to be sufficiently advanced that it can use and make tools, right? Like, but they don't have to be perfectly in phase with our dimension. So maybe we only interact with a portion of them. So the space station could have been created as a halfway point. You know that room that's between North and South Korea, when North Korea meets with the Republic of Korea, and like there's dudes on either sides like holding them to pull them back. So maybe the space station is like a room like that. It's like an armistice room, or a place where those two dimensions can meet in relative safety for each side. So that's the reason the players can move through it reasonably, is because it was built for something from our dimension and something not from our dimension, and those things interact here differently. So we don't necessarily have to design a whole creature, we just have to know kind of what parts of that creature interact with this part of the dimension and how the humans interact with it. That doesn't provide an answer, it just provides maybe some context. So in the Nightmare Switch, the satellite space station creatures are using a communications method to communicate with the surface. So there's got to be some reason they're interested in the Ninth World. Oh, that is the answer for the second ring. Yeah, that's the phase inducer. So that would allow something to go from either side. So in that case, then, if they're interacting with things on this side of the mirror, so maybe on the other side of the mirror, it's actually just the same space station in the out of phase portion, kind of like oh man, what's it called? The underneath in Stranger Things. Underneath? That's not right. The other dimension in Stranger Things, where it's like this parallel nightmare realm. So maybe the space station exists on both sides of the mirror, in mirror opposites. So if the players ever do decide to enter through there, they're going to actually experience the same thing, but in mirror reverse. That could be really interesting. So in that case, maybe this helmet. Oh, the upside down. Thanks, Snarf. Yeah, the underneath, the upside down. So maybe this helmet is all of these cables come in to different plates, and maybe what happens is the plates can move and expand so that if you are a small creature, they contract down and can encapsulate the head. And if you have a long or different shaped head, they pull apart, encapsulate, and so maybe the actual shape isn't important. So maybe if we have these long cables with these plates on the end, clearly in an array, it will become a helmet, right? So like faster than a player can react. As soon as you get close enough to this thing, if you've done the previous step to make room for the information, then all of a sudden you're inside this thing. Yeah, they definitely, Jason, I think they definitely would see them disappear. I don't think that would even just be the first time. Like if you're on one side of the mirror and you watch something travel through, like I think they're going to disappear. The question will be whether that mirror is the only place you can do that on the ship. I'm kind of leaning towards yes, unless there's been a matter leak or there's some other like hot wired system to hop phase. And maybe what we'll come across is an instance where the players can see something out of phase happening, like especially since I have one player who's slightly out of phase, and maybe they realize, crap, we need to be able to interact with these creatures, and it's like a run back to that mirror so they can switch phase and actually solve that problem in whatever way. What if we're only seeing the mechanical aspects of the device on our side? It only works on the upside down side. Or maybe it does something different, right? So maybe we have this, you lose your memory and you view a scene on our side, and if you go to the nightmare side, or whatever we're going to call that, and you do it there, something very different and purposeful happens. So these two machines do something kind of wonky and unintentional. I wonder if the phase machine is broken, right? What if they're actually interacting with the machines that are supposed to be on the nightmare side, but it's in our space, and the spot they need to interact with is in the other space. So the mirror has broken in some way, and it's flipped the sides of the ship. So the reason that all of the machines on our side do crazy shit is because we're using the wrong portion of it. Like we have like the male USB plug when we need the female USB plug, so they've like soldered wires to it, and some other creature has tried to adapt the nightmare side, and all they have to do is hop through the mirror, go to the other side, and they can do whatever the thing is they need to do. That's actually an interesting idea. I kind of like that, and I'm gonna take that as a note somewhere. I'm just gonna make general notes because that was like a lot of stuff we talked about. So in between zone for. Oh, so you would. I'm only gonna have two players. We want to split them up and have them each do part of the machine? I'm kind of inclined not to do that, only because there's two of them. So Numenera doesn't quite work the way like D&D does, where it like imagines a party of 4. It just has raw difficulties. So picking up a 300-pound deadlift bar is difficulty 9 all the time. And if you're a bodybuilder who's trained in it, you can lower that DC to 6. Or if you're particularly inept, you can raise it to 12, but it's a 9 is a 9 is a 9. It doesn't get any easier for advanced levels or more people trying. So it's not a problem to split them up, but I only have 2, so that social dimension of the game would be gone. We could do that if we could figure out a way for them to communicate across phase. So like let that stew around in there, and if we can figure out a way for them to communicate and a valid reason for doing so, I think we can come back to that definitely. Or they could understand the message. There's no reason they can't interact with the grasses. The grasses are not currently motivated to do anything other than to clue them in that these two rooms are related. If we want to change that, they can interact with the grasses. Well, they're on different ends of a chamber, a corridor which is collapsed. So they're in the same space and they're in different spaces, but it's the same space. What are you envisioning the grasses to do, Snarf? Oh, the grasses could be a way to communicate across phases. Right, because we know they move, and they move in tandem. So, like, you could shake them, like in Morse code, like, left is a dit, right is a da. Dit, dit, da, da, why did I die? That's a clever solution. I'd have to lay out the specifics of how they behave really clearly. I don't know that I would come up with that solution. Maybe I would. I don't know. That's an interesting, clever idea. That's a really clever idea. Yeah, the grasses can basically be a form of Morse code. Although the two players would need to share some code or come up with one ahead of time. It could be simple and slow, right? They could do like 1 for A, 2 for B. It doesn't have to be efficient. It just has to work. So if they needed to spell things out in an ad hoc, off-the-cuff code, that would be fine. It wouldn't be fast, but that would be all right. That's a really clever idea. I'm not sure I quite understand what that means, Jason. The grasses could behave almost as neurons when you view them outside of phase. Would you mean that, like, they themselves would, like, if I bump one, they're all gonna, like, I'm not quite sure I understand where you're going with that. Really wish I could get this camera to focus on this map. Focus on the map. Yeah, they could react to questions. I like the idea, I think, of the players like pushing them, because the players are going to see them move. So if the players come up with the idea of physically interacting with them, so we do have that one ring, the ring that pulsates when creatures are nearby, and it's supposed to be a communication function from one dimension to the other. So like that little trail is already there. So if we can have some way of letting the players know that, like making that a little bit more explicit. Well, when they pass through the mirror, maybe their perception of what that ring does will change. So when they're on our side, it simply flashes in colored lights, which are not clear. Maybe instead of flashing, it will have patterns, so that when they go to the mirror side, maybe that produces sound or some other thing that feels more like communication. Yeah, that could work. Yeah, so the grasses can behave differently on each side too. Yeah, we'll definitely yeah. There's something here. There's an idea there. I like this. We'll have to figure out how to pull all that together. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna pop down to this exit here, which we have not addressed yet. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely seems like we're on the same page there. Main feature table. Oh, I was taking notes. That's why I stopped. Then we started talking again. I'm just gonna have to rewatch this thing. I'll quit taking notes. 12. 12 is a corridor. All right, so this is going to be a corridor. It does not tell us to roll again, so I'm going to roll on the main feature table. Oh no, I didn't actually roll for the corridor. I just rolled for the fact there is a corridor. Passage bends to the right. Main feature table, 34, is a chamber. So we need room size, which is going to be, man, I am tired of 15-foot rooms. 50 feet. All right, that'll teach me to re-roll dice. And shape. It is a rectangle. So this is supposed to be a 50 by 100 foot room. Holy hell. Let me roll on the chamber features table to see whether we want to like stick with that or not. That's huge. And how many exits would we have? Okay. All right, screw it. We're doing a huge room. So it's 20, 30, 40, 50. We're going to do a rectangle, but we're not going to do the same rectangle as large. All right, so for exits, we've got 2 additional exits and 1 sealed exit. So let's snatch an exit here and here. And let's have a sealed exit in this corner. And I think I'm actually going to have that sealed exit enter here. Rooms that size could be a hangar. It could be. I like the idea of having a hangar or a dock. So maybe after we produce some of the random areas, we'll go through and figure some other areas that are not random, which could be like loading docks, hangars, cafeterias, and we could drop them in. All right, so this chamber feature has a square pool in the center based on our table, which contains a boiling white fluid, which is cool to the touch. So this is room 18. I just realized I haven't saved this document we've been working on, so I should do that. Okay. 18, large room, pool of white boiling liquid, which is cool. Do we want to have this pool of white boiling liquid be different on either side of the mirror? So maybe on our side it's a white pool of boiling liquid, which is cool to the touch, and on the other side something different is going on. Maybe it's like a pillar of what appears to be white light with changing patterns, and it's actually a kind of computer or interface, information retrieval storage system and interface where the creatures could use it to store information, get information, or transmit information. That would be interesting. So on our side, it's that. On the nightmare side, I don't know why I'm calling it that, but we are. It's a pillar of white light with changing, whoa, spelling is hard. Changing patterns and works like an information storage retrieval system and communications tower. communications bank. Yeah, so this could then end up as being kind of part of this system. So maybe when we head to the nightmare side, maybe some of these room divisions aren't present. Maybe they're only present on our side. Well, we want them to navigate it in the same way, to have that familiar look. So I'll stick a pin in that and come back to it. All right, I'm going to make a quick list of other things that we need to do. So we wanted to, at some point, produce a hangar. I like that idea. Like barracks or bunks. Cafeterias. So it doesn't have to be clear to the players that these areas serve those functions. So what amounts to barracks for these creatures don't have to look anything at all like what we would expect them to, or the same for hangars and other stuff. So that could definitely be something else. I think at this point we've got a really good start on this. I think we have a pretty good system, like look for how the system works. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. Richard, Jason, thanks especially for hanging out in the chat and coming up with some really awesome ideas. I'm going to continue to use this system. If anyone else is interested in using it, you can find the Ruin creation generator in the Jade Colossus book for Numenera. It was available with the Humble Bundle, so if you were able to snag that, you may already have it. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in and hanging out with me this morning, building a space station for Numenera. This is Let's Play Games West Virginia. I'm Kevin. We've got something going on every night of the week. Please tune in. We're here all the time. I will see you guys again tomorrow for Poke Mondays on Monday. And if this is the kind of thing you like, make sure you check out Jason's stream on Thursday, World Builders, where they're building a campaign setting from scratch. So this has been super cool. Thanks, guys. I appreciate all of the feedback, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks.